Hey punks! Welcome back to the University of Radlands. We have another Cult of Chrome preview to talk about in today's video. And as always, I will link Daniel's Board Game Geek post in the description below. So let's talk about the next camp. We have the new Resonator. So one of the camps from the base camp set that is being replaced. So the original gave you one starting card at the beginning of the game, and for 2 water, you could destroy an unprotected, damaged card. So it's essentially just kind of like a rail gun that allowed you to get a card at the beginning of the game instead of no cards. Pretty limited on the targets, destroy an unprotected, damaged card, so it could hit camps or people, which was nice, but that's the old Resonator. Let's talk about the new Resonator. You still get one starting card to begin the game. And just now noticing the chicken in the way of the speaker there. That's really funny. But for 1 water, damage. Deal a damage. This must be the only ability you use this turn. So what does that mean? So most of the time on camps and people, you're spending water on that person to use an ability for them. So, whether that's damage or injure, sending out the raiders, restoring stuff, all of that is considered an ability. But there's a lot of times during the game where you have to play people or play events, or you're wanting to junk stuff, and you're not really paying for much on the board. That's where Resonator comes in. So this gives you a cheap damage as long as that's the only ability you're planning on using to pay for that turn. So maybe you have a couple people you want to play out, have an extra water, Resonator. You spend a couple water on like a napalm or a famine, and you're not wanting to play a person, well, Resonator. So it's a neat camp. Cheap damage is always really good, especially cheap damage that gives you a card at the beginning of the game is pretty good. New kind of design space, kind of a puzzle to think about. So stuff that might synergize well. As I mentioned, you're wanting things that don't necessarily have abilities that you have to pay for. So Oasis would be a decent or pretty good camp to go with this. It doesn't have an ability to pay for, it just has a passive trait. Fortress might be another kind of similar one where it's mostly being played for its trait. Now it does have an ability that you pay for, but Fortress does start 1 space up. So kind of interesting with Resonator. And then as I mentioned before, the stuff that you're going to be using in the in the punk or draw deck is playing people onto the board or playing events into the event queue, or 0-timed events would also work with Resonator. So it was a fun one to play test, and like I said, very, very puzzly, so made play testing those games really interesting and fun to experiment with the card. I think it is an improvement over the previous Resonator, and people really like having the cheaper way to deal damage. So, punks, what do you think about the new Resonator? Are you excited for it? Did you like the old one? What do you think? Tell me about it. What combos do you see with it that maybe I'm missing? Comment down below and we'll talk about it. And as always, stay thirsty, punks.